So today we're going to be installing an Agile lift kit on a two-wheel drive Sprinter van. This is going to be my first video doing this. Done about 2 dozen of these now, and it seems like people really like these kits, and we've been getting more and more of them, so I figured I'd make a video for YouTube, and maybe this can help some people out. So a lot of these kits will have an add-on front dampener, whether it be Fox or another manufacturer. All the kits are different, all depends on how you order it. This one's one of the smaller ones, so yeah. So here's all of our parts we have laid out for the two-wheel drive Sprinter van lift. We got shocks for the rear, we got new leafs for the rear, we got new U-bolts for the rear. This customer has a pedal box we're installing, which is basically going to plug into the fly-by-wire throttle to manipulate the how it works. We got some add-on coils that are going to go on where you can't see in there, where the factory shocks are. So the factory shocks are right there, and this thing's got a mono leaf up front, and those coils are going to go around those factory shocks. The two-wheel drive is only going to get spacers on the front on this one. A lot of these get spacers on the front and rear with wheel studs that go in replace of the bolts. This kit also has, like most of these, the pieces that will go in for the front coils actually have 3 heights. I set them all to the middle, and the customer wants it a little higher, a little lower. We have a little bit of adjustability, and these are actually going to go. So as far as lifting the front end, I use a couple different methods for supporting it. Prefer not to use a lift. I like to use a floor jack into the middle and 2 jack stands like that. And I'll leave the floor jack there just for some added safety. And just give us a little bit of extra support underneath there just for safety. And I will do the whole install of this kit at about ground level for my own safety with just the front off the ground. And when the front's done, I will lower the front down and lift just the back off the ground. Again, for my own safety, because the Sprinter vans are pretty big, and yeah. All right, so now that we're supported, step 1 is going to be to remove the wheels. There we go, there's one side unmodified, and as you can see, the two-wheel drive is a little bit different than the four-wheel drives. So I had one little discrepancy with this kit. Normally, Agiles will send us 4 spacers and studs. This two-wheel drive is a little different. I noticed something different about it, which I'm not used to seeing on these Sprinter vans. So what's different about this one is the rear wheel looks like it's a dually, but when you look underneath of it, it's got the dually rear end and the dually leafs, but single rear wheels. So I just got off the phone with Agile, and they say this is what's called a super single. So super single has the dually rear end, but with single rear wheels, and the wheel spacers in the Agile kit will only go in the front, and the hardware that will be used for the front is just going to be some extended Mercedes factory style wheel bolts. So the hardware they had sent for my front spacers was for a traditional dually rear end, front end setup. So I had to send that hardware back, and they're going to be sending me the correct spacer hardware tomorrow. So I can still get the kit installed today. I'm just going to have to pull the front wheels off this thing tomorrow and put the proper spacer hardware in. So not a big dilemma, but a little hiccup in the install. All right, so the disassembly for this is pretty easy. Basically got a ABS and brake sensor wire that needs to get unclipped from here, and these 2 bolts need to get removed. So that bolt and that bolt come out next. something you need to make sure when you're doing this is the axle can pop out, but this is a two-wheel drive, so that's not going to be a problem with this one, with the inner axle popping out of its orientation. So this side's bottoms out, that's unbound, that's free. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. So next up is going to be removing the inner splash shield on both sides. And we got a couple Torx here, which look like they are going to be T25 Torx. And so we got 1, 2 T25 Torx, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, roughly 6 10mm plastic nuts that are going to have to be removed. And we're going to pull these splash shields off. The splash shield's removed. So in this particular kit, there will be no modifications to the splash shields on the four-wheel drives, where we end up installing a bracket in here with an additional shock. A lot of customers choose the Fox shocks. Those kits will also get a sway bar drop bracket that this one does not. And those ones also get a modification to the splash shields to properly fit the components that are added on, which will not be in this video, but in the next video I will be doing one for a four-wheel drive that will have all that information for you guys. So next thing up in the video is we're going to go inside the Sprinter, and we are going to disassemble what we need to get to the upper strut mounts. Passenger side, you can see this customer has a fire extinguisher on there. Basically just gotta take that off. So for the passenger side, it's normally as simple as just turning that and pulling that panel off. Next up, you're gonna pull back some of those shenanigans, and we got access to the passenger side. So for the driver's side, it's gonna be a little different. I'm sure there's a few ways to do this. You can take off these bolts here. I think they're Torx, to help ease the removal of this rubber floor panel, but I find the rubber floor panel comes out just fine by itself, so I'm not gonna be able to video pulling that out, but it's pretty easy the way it comes out. Normally I start from over here and lift that, and I'll start pulling this out and finagle it out. Here's the driver's side. Rubber floorboard out, and this little piece of foam just sits there. Put it off to the side, and now we have access to the driver's side hardware. This part, it's better to have an assistant. I got my buddy Steve over here. Hey! Steve is gonna be holding the strut so it doesn't come smashing down. If this was a four-wheel drive, you have to worry about the strut hitting the outer CV boot and tearing it. So something to note. So it's basically just going to be 13 millimeters, 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one out. Let's put our hardware off to the side, and this little plate will go back in place when it's done. And I'm gonna do the same on the passenger side now. We got both of our front struts out, and we are gonna disassemble the top hats and modify these next. All right, so we got 24 millimeter hardware for these. It's one, so we got one nut, one washer that goes up that way, our top hat piece, and last but not least, our boot. So with the boot, this is where our modification comes in. We are going to remove this washer piece out of there, and this boot will not be reused. It's gonna come our modification. We got our boots off, we got these spacers out. So if you look at these spacers, they have 3 notches up on them, and originally these were oriented downward. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this over to the grinder, and we're gonna grind these 3 notches off, and then this is actually gonna get flipped and put on the opposite direction. So I'll show you guys that in a minute. So one of the things you definitely want to do to protect your brake line from getting too tight is install some sort of bungee on here while this is free floating, just so you don't put too much tension on the brake line, metal to rubber crimp, and damage that. We don't want to do that. All right, time to install the add-on coils for the front. So we're going to take each strut, clean it off. Let's get our components. So, this is going to be the first piece to go on. We got our height adjustment piece. It's going to go on like that. And this is going to sit on here. And the orientation of that cut for this one is going to go backwards like that. Next up, we're going to grab our coil. And our coil is going to go on. Agile uses Hyperco coils, which are some of the best out there. It's used in the mountain bike world as well. Really good brand of coils. This coil is going to go on that. Next up, we have our top hat supplied with the kit and the bearing in there. That goes on next. We got a washer that's going to go on after that. Then we have the factory piece that was modified. Originally, this had notches that were pointed down, and this would have went down. You grind the notches off, and this actually goes up. It's going to go on like that. We're going to have our stock top hat piece. Drop it. And on many of these, they go together a little simpler. On the two-wheel drives, it's a little different. Sometimes you got to have a friend help compress that. And I'm going to put Loctite on that. I'm going to put the nut on, and we're going to torque that to spec. I'm going to have a buddy come over here and help hold that down for me just to simplify this. All right, so I'm going to have Steve come on over here and hold this down. Come around here and hold that down for me, Steve. Got it. So you're going to want to push down this pretty hard to expose the... Just lined up right. Push down on that. But let me get a little bit of Loctite on there first.
Okay.
I normally put this on first, but this time I didn't. So push down a little harder, gonna get that washer on that way, and we're gonna get this nut started. And that's one. Next up, hit this with my gun. And I'll go back to that to torque that to spec. So as you can see, this one is fully assembled now. There we go, we got two modified and assembled front struts with the Hyperco coils from the Agile rip kit. And the only other thing that's going to go on this is some of these kits also have some boots that go on here that basically eliminate rocks from going in the coils. Are they necessary? That's up to you, use your own discretion. Wouldn't be a work day if it didn't involve some blood out of me. Nature of the beast, I guess. You know, anytime you're working on cars, it's pretty much daily occurrence to be bleeding. This is my biggest gripe with this field, is it takes a lot of knowledge to be able to do this stuff and experience, and I don't think I get paid enough to bleed every day, and kind of aggravates me. So if you guys are thinking about working on cars, choose another career, choose something that pays better. Computers are where it's at nowadays. One thing I want to note about these kits, when you lift the front end of an independent suspension vehicle, it's generally going to give it more positive camber, which is a problem. It's going to be out of spec. So this vehicle will need an alignment afterwards, like any vehicle gets lifted. And if you notice on the front struts, there's actually going to be, the top holes are elongated and that is for camber adjustability. So when I get this thing up on the alignment rack, if my camber is not where I want it to be, I'll lift the front end up, I'll loosen this hardware, I will finagle it with a second person or with a pry bar and re-torque this stuff to spec and recheck my camber numbers. And so here's our hardware for the front top hats for the struts. Everything's going to get a little bit of Loctite on them for safety. Doesn't take much, but something's better than nothing. So time for the install. I got Steve here who's going to help me lift these into the proper position. And I'm going to come inside the vehicle and try and get these bolts lined up. All right, Steve, go for it.
Coming at you.
So we're pretty close. One in, two in, three, and four. And these will be torqued to the manufacturer's recommended torque spec. We are also going to be doing the same on the passenger side next. There we go, there's our assembly in, and next up's going to be to get the two bolts in here. Be advised that the ABS and brake sensor lines, assuming it has them, they need to get oriented how they were prior. And on this vehicle, it's going to be this one particular line here for the ABS. Actually goes, it's gonna be tough to get on video. This one line is actually gonna go underneath. It's a little bit snug, but that one line goes under there as it was from the factory, and this goes in the pocket like that. So what I'm gonna do from here is I'm gonna get a floor jack and lift up on this control arm to get these bolts properly lined up so we can get them in. All right, so time to get things lined up. I'm gonna use my floor jack here under the lower control arm. Lift it up a little bit. And so we are in. So our hardware here is going to get red Loctite on it. Here's our red Loctite. These bolts in. A little bit higher. One in. Two in. Let's get our nuts started. Take our bungee cord out now. You can even go as far as clipping on your lines back where they were. And now for this part, as you can see, this is where our camber adjustment comes in. So I'm gonna set this one kind of right up in the middle of the adjustment, knowing that it's gonna have to be adjusted on the alignment rack, but I'll set that up in the middle, and if I'm lucky, I'll be spot on, probably not, and I'll probably have to adjust on the alignment rack. These are gonna get snugged up and torqued to spec right now. Just like the driver's side, we're gonna do the same on the passenger side. Gonna use a floor jack under the lower control arm. Get things lined up. Last but not least, we're going to reinstall the splash shields unmodified on this two-wheel drive, as well as the interior panels that were taken off. Don't need to show you on the video. It's just a simple splash shield. Get it up there, get the hardware in. Like I said prior, on the four-wheel drives that add an additional front shock on, you will have to modify the splash shield, and I will show that in a follow-up video for the four-wheel drive Agile Rip Kit Sprinter Vans. One thing I should note about the Agile Sprinter lift kits. This is just one style. All the kits they provide are basically built for your vehicle, specifically based off of your weight, your size, and what you're going to do with it, and also your budget, where this kit just adds a spring. Some of these kits you actually have the option as well where you don't have to do these modifications and you can get a whole replacement bolt-in assembly for this. I believe Coney is one of the manufacturers they use, and I think there's one other one. Pretty nice stuff, a little bit simpler, just no modification, basically the same job for the two-wheel drives. So this is about the point in the install where everything's done, the splash shield's in. I still have the interior panels put in. This is the point where you would do the wheel studs. So Agile provides wheel studs that you will Loctite in, torque to spec, and you will use their provided wheel spacers and bolt your wheels on. However, we had a little discrepancy with this kit because this is called a super single rear end. It's basically a dually rear end with single wheels. So the front's a little different on this one. So looks like we may have gotten the wrong hardware for these. So Agile is overnighting us the proper hardware. So I'm going to button these front wheels up, and tomorrow when we get the hardware, basically I'm going to pull the front wheels off and put the proper wheel bolts for these wheel spacers in, which I don't think I'm going to add to this video. It's pretty self-explanatory. Here we go, vehicle's back on the ground. Wheels are snugged. Gonna find the manufacturer's recommended torque spec and torque them. There's a few variants based on if it's got steel wheels or aluminum wheels or if it's dually or not, so I'm not gonna give you guys any torque specs. I'm gonna leave that up to you. Get them for your specific model, whether it be a 2500 or 3500 or a single rear wheel or a dual rear wheel or a super single like this one, which is going to be a little different. But we're going to torque up both front wheels, support the rear end, get the rear end up in the air, and start doing the rear leaf spring replacements and coil and shocks. I'm sorry. Should note that I'm a professional, and what you decide to do is up to your discretion. I am not liable for how you lift vehicles. If you drop and get hurt, that's on you, not me. This I'm just showing you the way I do it. So now we're gonna get started with the rear. And what I'm gonna do for the rear is we're gonna put something in front of the front wheels so this thing can't roll away. I got the rear of the lift under this one's gonna help lift it up. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set some jack stands up under the rear end of this once I get it up in the air and get the rear wheels pulled off. So this vehicle is a spring over axle on the back, and this is how we're going to support it. I'm going to lower it down onto these jacks, and it will be stable. So there we go. We got our lift lowered down properly to have the rear axle supported with the jack stands. And next up, time to pull the rear wheels. All right, so we got the rear wheels off our Sprinter, our super single dually axle, but it's not a dually. So the rear end on these is pretty basic. On the this style, the dually style setup is going to be a little different than the standard single rear wheel, where the brake lines, the hydraulic brake lines, they go under on this one, as you can see, and they're going to stay under on this one. But on the other style, they go over, and what you'll do is you'll install a piece of hose that's slit in there, and you'll secure it so in case the brake line rubs the rear leafs, that they do not wear through. And also on this style, the mounts are more inboard than the standard single rear wheel setup. On the standard single rear setup, this whole bracket is over much further this way, as well as the shackle setup on the dually is totally different than the single rear wheel. You know, this is a small shackle up in here in this pocket. The normal single rear wheels actually have that whole piece moved out, and the shackle looks totally different. So we're going to start the disassembly on removing the U-bolts first. Then next we're going to remove that bolt right there. And lastly, we're going to remove, probably end up doing the upper shackle bolt. Depends on how easy I can get to it. Lastly, we'll remove one of these two bolts. And we'll get the rear leaves pulled out. And should also note, there's our shocks, and shocks are actually going to come out right now. We'll do that first. So with Sprinter vans, there's one thing that I expect to encounter on pretty much every one, and that's things are going to be different. On this particular one, where the spare tire would have been, we got a water storage tank. Not going to be in the way of anything, but you never know what you're going to get into. One other thing I forgot to note, it has to do with the sway bars on these things. You can see on this dually style, it's a pretty big rear sway bar, and the end link is pretty small, and we are going to disconnect the end link right now so that we have more flex for the removal and installation. Alright, so for our sway bar end link removal, it's going to be 19 millimeter and 19 millimeter. For our shock removal, it's going to be 21 and 21, I thought. Yeah. So on this particular model, for the top bolts, you can actually get to it right there. On the normal single rear wheel style, it's actually going to be one bolt that's very long that threads into the frame rail here. And there would actually be a spacer that goes on with the Fox shocks. This is going to be the same deal. I'm going to remove this upper bolt, and when we do get to the point where we install the new shocks, there's going to be a washer that goes in the top. Alright, so for our top bolt, it's one of those jobs really got to get in there. Again, it's going to be 21 millimeter and 21 millimeter. Alright, there we go. One factory shock out. We're going to do the same on the other side. Alright, so next up is going to be the U-bolt removal. And you will never do both sides at the same time. It's not how I do it. So the way I do it is we have our frame supported, we have our axle supported. There's really only a little bit of load on these jack stands right now. Axle's barely touching. So I'm gonna use a 21 millimeter socket and remove these 4 nuts down here and lift the U-bolts out. And on the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to very slightly loosen the U-bolts, and I'm going to do that for the need to pivot the axle around when I go to get the new leaf in, because one leaf's going to be huge and one's going to be pretty flat, so we're going to have to finagle things around. And if you do not loosen the U-bolts on the other side, which you can see through there, if you don't loosen those, you're going to have a hell of a fight trying to get the this rear leaf and the axle lined up properly. 19 millimeter, it feels like. Alright, there's both of our rear U-bolts out, and we have one other thing we need to do. Got this piece to take off, and this is going to be reused on the new leaves. So these don't always fit on your new leaves. Sometimes you got to enlarge the hole. On this one, we look pretty good. Everything's proper. Sometimes, based off the leaf and based off the configuration of this, you will have to enlarge those holes. You know, some style vehicles, you'll even have to remove a center pin and reinstall the center pin so you can get your top plate in properly. But on these vehicles, these just sit on top of the new one. So you're gonna want to use 24 socket on this side, 24 wrench or 15/16. Sometimes you gotta give that bolt a little tap to get it started. So many years ago, I had a manager at the Honda dealer tell me that I should make a YouTube channel. This is probably 15 years ago, and I laughed about it and never thought about it. And he said I should make a channel based off of my my talk about my theory about the way society's going, the way things are happening here, politics, the universe, you know, things that interest me. And I think this channel is going to be used as an outlet as well to, you know, to say what I want to say about things that are going on, and things that I feel like need change and need to be said, things I care about, you know, and things you guys maybe should too. You know, I can start off with saying, in my 39 years in this body, I don't even think us as humans are even from this planet. And I'm being honest with you, I don't think we're from here. You know, if you look at all the animals on this planet, and you look at where they're at, where their place is at in evolution, you look at us, don't exactly fit in, do we? Something seems a little off, and I know I can't be the only one who sees this. This is not like a new thought of mine. I felt this way from the time I was a 7-year-old kid. You know, I had my beliefs then, and I don't think they've changed a whole heck of a lot. They've definitely evolved from what I believe about things, but still go by, you know, my core value of what I think things came from. So for the rear shackle removal, we're actually gonna take the top bolt out. It's gonna be a 24mm swivel. Hopefully get my gun up there, and I'm gonna have to get a 24 wrench open end up the other side. And we'll swap the shackle over onto the new leaf once it's on the ground. These are gonna be a little difficult to get being on video myself, but I'll do this to the best of my ability. Bolts out now. Time to lift this leaf out. I do this by myself, but I can tell you, you're gonna need an assistant for the new leaf going in for sure. And a lot of times, you actually got to go up a little higher. Like I'm gonna have to go up a little bit higher on the frame, so I can get this thing to clear thing out. These are the light ones. Here we go. So it's actually going to be a 24mm and a 24mm. Remove the shackles. Simple as swapping it over to the new leaf. These things are heavy. Don't want to knock them over into your ankles. You will be hurting. Put our bolt through. Same orientation it came out, and I'm just going to start this nut by hand. Like I said prior, I'm going to leave it like that for now, and what I'll actually do is take that nut back off, put some Loctite on there, and torque the spec. once it's on the ground and loaded. Next up, I'm going to go even higher on the lift. I can tell you from experience that you need to raise these things up pretty high to get the new leaves in, so that the back area clears and you can get your front into that pocket properly. And this is going to be a two-man job, and you'll probably end up with bruises on your upper legs holding the leaf up, shenagling this. Talk about is the brake line. On the dually model, the brake line goes under the leaves. On the non-dually model, the brake line is going to go, you're going to pull it out and the leaf's going to fit through here. Like I said, it's a two-man job getting the leaf up here, and the best way is to get the leaf up more towards this side and get it through. And once you get into that pocket and the back pocket closed, you can start lowering the lift down a little bit, closing up your gap, which is going to give you more slack on this, and you know, hopefully this doesn't get snagged on the leaf. You got to be very careful with that. All right, the hardest part of the whole job, the rear leaf install. Got my buddy Joey here to help us. Doing all right back there? Yeah. Stop right about there. Let's go up. About an inch right there. Tiny quarter of an inch up, too much. Go up about half an inch. A tiny bit more right there. Down a little bit. You can let go of your tension. All right, there we go. We got our front bolt in, got our center pin pretty lined up, and then the rear shackle is pretty far out of the pocket, so I'm going to lower the vehicle down 8 to 10 inches and try and get that lined up. On the install, I went down a few inches already. You can see we're pretty close. I'll snug this bolt up so that I can set the shackle position kind of roughly where I want it to get this lined up to get that bolt in. So it looks like we are lined up. Let's see if our bolt goes in. After about 5 minutes of shenagling the ride height, finally got it where bolt goes through. So I'm gonna put that bolt in, gonna start the nut, and like I said prior, once this vehicle's on the ground with the wheels on, loaded up, then they will get torqued to the manufacturer's recommended spec. So there we go. We got the one rear leaf in and shackle in loosely. And the center pin is lined up. We don't have any load on this right now. And next step we're going to do is we're going to take this stock top plate that's going to go on, and we got the two U-bolts that are going to go on. So U-bolts, going to go in loosely for the moment being. We got our star employee of the month over here, Caleb. Caleb's on break right now. All right, so got this started. Let's get a 21 millimeter and get them a little bit snug. Equally, I should say. Not a 21, 19 millimeter. Tighten up U-bolts, always want to go around it. Just keep them equal. So I like snugging them up. Once I know they're snug, I'll loosen them a little bit.
loose on that one. Like I stated before, the reason why I'm not tightening these fully right now is because I got to go around and get the other leaf out, and if I tighten these up, I won't be able to get the center pin lined up with this side tight. So this side stays loose until we get the other side in. So that's pretty much it for the one rear leaf install. And let me take a look at our brake line right now. And talked about before on the dually style setups, the line goes under. On the non-dually setups, the line will go over and get a protector over it. And all I really have left to do is put a rear shock in on this side, but I do the rear shocks last, so I'm going to skip over to the other side and get the rear leaf in, which I'm not going to have on video, and we'll get back to it when we're ready to put the rear shocks in and reconnect the rear sway bar. Agile does an excellent job of labeling the front and rear of the leaf springs, so there's no possibility of issue with orientation. And if there's driver's side and passenger side, I'm sure they will label it as well. So I'm now at the point in the video where we got the passenger side leaf in, and the two U-bolts on this side and the two U-bolts on the other side are still loose. I'm going to tighten these nuts up in my air gun for right now. They're going to get pretty tight, and when I actually go to align this thing, I will torque all 8 of those nuts to spec at that point. Alright, we're in the point of the video to install the Agile provided Fox rear shocks. So in this vehicle, we're going to start with starting the bolt through the hole from the outside. See it coming through. We're going to put our supplied washer on right there. And put our shock in place. So I'm trying to do this with one hand here. There we go. Let's find a nut, and as everything else, we got Loctite on there. And the shock bolts will get torqued to spec when we're on the ground like everything else. Top is in, the bottom it's going to be a little bit trickier to get in. I'm not going to put this part on video because I got to fight this. I basically got to push the shock up to compress it to get it to line up with that and get the bolt in. So I only got 2 hands, and yeah, I don't think we'll be able to get this one on video. All right, so all the rear shock bolts are in. Yeah, due to the style of the bushings they have in them, they got torqued already to spec and Loctited. Like I've said with everything else, there's some variants of torque specs, so I'm going to recommend you use the manufacturer-specific torque specs for your exact model of Sprinter van. So the only thing I really have left to do on this lift is the rear sway bar. It's a little further away than it would have been initially. Yeah, I could probably force it in and get it in now, or loosen up the center bushings, clamps, and get it in. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to lift the vehicle up a little bit. I'm going to get the rear wheels on. I'm going to lift the vehicle up a little bit. I'm going to take the jack stands out. I'm going to set it on the ground, and once the vehicle's on the ground, that's going to line up a whole heck of a lot easier, and I can get the rear sway bar hooked up. I got the vehicle on the ground. I just torqued up all the U-bolts and the rear leaf spring hardware. All I have left to do is put the rear sway bar bolts in, and I actually said earlier in the video they were 19mm. They're actually 18mm and 18mm. So when we slam these in, and what's left to do is align this thing. A little tough tell getting late in the day and my light's dead right now, but I just got that bolt in for one rear sway bar. I have to tap it in with a hammer the rest of the way, and have to do the same on the other side as well. So here it is, our finalized Sprinter van lift. Probably settle a little bit after I drive it. I still gotta get the wheel spacers up front when we get the right hardware from Agile tomorrow. See, I gotta pull the front wheels off it in the morning, get the spacers in there, get the front wheels torqued up, and get this thing up on the alignment rack and get it aligned, test drive it, recheck the after ride heights, and
is it. So, hope you guys enjoyed my first real YouTube video. Any questions, leave them in the comments. More than happy to answer them when I can get to it. Enjoy.